Hello everyone, let's go ahead and take a look at algebraic expressions. Now let's start off with some very important terminology. One, we have a variable. Now a variable is a symbol used to represent a quantity. And generally speaking, we're talking about numerical quantities. Now an expression, on the other hand, is a mathematical phrase involving quantities and operations. And we'll take a look at some of those phrases a bit later. An equation, on the other hand, is the equality of two expressions. So let's go ahead, before we actually move into some of this with regards to expressions, let's compare and contrast the difference between expressions and equations, because oftentimes people get confused as to which one you're referring to, and it's very important to know the distinction between the two. So let's compare and contrast expressions versus equations. Now what do you do with expressions? With expressions, you simplify the expression, or you evaluate what that expression is actually going to come out to as a single quantity. On the other hand, an equation, which is an equality of two expressions, in those particular situations, you're actually trying to solve for the equation. You're trying to solve the equation, or in other words, you're trying to solve for a particular variable in the equation. Okay, now one of the keys that I would like to go ahead and mention right at the beginning of this particular unit of study is that we need to focus on both the quantities that we're dealing with as well as the operations that are performed. Now when I talk about operations, I'm talking about, say for example, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Those are your basic arithmetic operations. It's going to be absolutely essential for you to be able to do well in algebra, to recognize the operation that's being applied to the quantities and the quantities themselves. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at some examples here of expressions, because this is where we'll start off with. Now let's say, for example, it says write an expression describing the number of seats needed for, say for example, the number of adults and the number of children in this, say for example, a particular group that is going to a movie theater. So let's go ahead and take a look at situation 1 and situation 2. Now what's the difference between these two situations is that in situation 1, I'm given particular values so that when I actually go ahead and determine the total number of seats, I can actually go ahead and simplify to say that the total number of seats is 10 plus 18 or 28 seats. Now in situation number 2 though, it's a little bit different because we don't know what the total number of adults is, and we don't know what the number of children are. And if that's the case, then what we're going to do is we're going to use a variable to represent those quantities. Now, what happens then is that when we actually go ahead and describe the total number of seats, I'm actually going to be able to create an expression now, okay, which is a mathematical phrase involving quantities and operations, where I have two quantities and the operation is addition, because I'm trying to find the total number of seats, which means that, of course, I just have to add the number of adults and the number of children. So I could then say that the total number of seats is just going to be A plus C. Now, let's go ahead and use the same information, and let's go ahead and write an expression describing the total cost, say, for example, of attending a movie. If the cost is 1,000 yen per adult and 500 yen per child. Now, I'm going to be using an initial statement again and saying, well, okay, the total cost is going to be the total cost for the adults plus the total cost for all children. And if I go ahead and take a look at situation number 1, notice that what I have is I have values already established for how many adults I have and how many children I have. And I also know how much it's going to cost per adult and how much it's going to cost per child. Therefore, I can go ahead and say that the total cost for everybody is going to be 10 times 1,000, because I know I have 10 adults at 1,000 yen per adult, plus 18, because I have 18 children, times it by 500 yen per child, because I know that that's the cost per child. So what I can do now is I can go ahead and simplify by just saying 10,000 plus 9,000 is going to be 19,000 yen, and that's going to be the total cost for situation number 1. Now again, take a look at what's going to happen in situation number 2. Situation number 2 is slightly different because again, we don't know exactly how many adults nor how many children we have, but we can still generate an expression that is going to express the total cost given particular situations. So what I can do then is I can say that the total cost then is going to be A, which is the total number of adults, times it by 1,000, because it's going to cost 1,000 yen per adult, plus B, which is the total number of, plus C, plus C times it by 500, because that of course is going to be the cost per child. And so what I can write then is that the total cost is 1,000 times A plus 500 times C. So notice what I have here is, again, I have a mathematical expression, which is a string, okay, or a phrase involving quantities and operations. So here's a quantity here, here's a quantity here, there's an operation that's joining them. So the total cost is that particular expression there. Okay, so let's go ahead and wrap up again. Again, we're starting off with algebraic expressions. We need to know what variables are and what the difference is between an expression and an equation, because they are very different in terms of what you try to do with them. Okay, in the expression, again, we simplify and evaluate. In the equation, and we solve. It's going to be absolutely important, especially in algebra, that you focus on both the quantities and the operations that are acted upon the quantities. Okay, and we'll go ahead and take a look at some further examples the next time that we meet in class. So I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.